Hello everyone, FPL Wrapped here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Today is the final video of pre-season. I'll be rating your final Game Week 1 teams ahead of the deadline. Of course, there will also be a deadline stream as there is every week. So 2.5 hours before the deadline at 4 PM UK time, I will be starting the stream. Tune into that to see my final team and also have your final dilemmas answered as well. I just wanted to say thank you for all of the support during pre-season, but for one final time, please do smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, in today's video, I'll be looking at 7 different drafts, and I've chosen them for a reason because each of them has a slightly different thing that I would like to discuss. If you do want to get your team rated for free before the Game Week 1 deadline, I will leave a link down below. You can do it for completely free. You do not have to sign up if you don't want to, but if you decide that you do like the site and you want to look at future weeks as well, you can sign up as a paid member. It's about £3 a month, and at the moment, you're getting 50% off if you use the second link in the description. The first couple of drafts, we're looking at Mohamed Salah because myself included and lots of other managers are starting to think, do I want Mohamed Salah in my team ahead of Game Week 1? He's got a great record in the opening fixtures in Game Week 1, and he's also got Bournemouth at home in Game Week 2 when Haaland's got Newcastle at home. So great record in the opening day, and Chelsea aren't the best defence in the league by any means, and also a great fixture in Game Week 2 as well. And also, just due to the pricing this year, it's very, very easy to get both Salah, Haaland, and a very balanced team too. So what I thought I would do at first is pick what, in my opinion, is essentially the best Salah draft. A lot of people sent in very similar drafts. This one is from Flooney7. I think this is the general structure that I would be going with if I wanted Mohamed Salah. I think the backline is very template. A lot of people have Onana or Johnson or Pickford, Chilwell, Gabriel, and Estepinian. A lot of people have that back line. The midfield is actually fairly template too, but to get Mohamed Salah in, you do have to drop Martinelli and you have to drop Bruno Fernandes as well because it's just difficult to get a team with them and Salah in. You still get Saka, you still get Rashford, but you then chuck Salah in there, and then to finish off the midfield, you have to have two £6.5 million midfielders. In this case, Flooney's got Eze and Diaby. I would still probably put Mbeumo up there, and I would argue maybe Matoma ahead of Diaby, at least to start the season. I do think Diaby will be great, but to start the season, I might be on something like Eze and Matoma, or Mbeumo and Matoma, just for those opening fixtures for the Brighton attackers. But of course, this draft does have João Pedro and Erling Haaland as well. And if you go for this rough structure, you can also have a £4.5 million defender in that first spot on the bench too. This one has Colwill. I would personally go for a Dogi. I think he's got some attacking threat, decent clean sheet potential as well. I know they're not great under Postecoglou in pre-season defensively, but I think they will get there. And Dogi is playing such an attacking role that from Game Week 3, I think he'll be an excellent option. You've got Turner on the bench as well, who rotates really nicely with Onana. So I just wanted to say at the start of this, because a lot of people are looking for Salah drafts. If I were to have Salah, and I'll be honest, I could still be convinced on the deadline stream to go with Salah. I'm about 60-40 in favour of a non-Salah draft at the moment. I would personally be going for something along these lines. You might want to change the personnel a little bit. The Fantasy Football Hub algorithm is rating this at 94%, which is pretty decent, but not necessarily as good as the non-Salah drafts. For example, my current non-Salah draft is about 96-97%, and it's predicted to get 63.9 points in Game Week 1. That being said, the Salah draft, of course, is much better for Game Week 2 than the non-Salah drafts. So it's almost like you may be sacrificing your team slightly in Game Week 1 to get Salah, but in Game Week 2, you've got the best captaincy option, in my opinion, and your team looks really, really strong. So this is, in my opinion, the best Salah draft. First question of the video. Please let me know down below in the comments, do you currently have Salah in your drafts going into Game Week 1? So draft number 2 is another Salah draft, but don't worry, if you're not going with Salah, they're not all Salah drafts in today's video, but I just wanted the first 2 to be that because I think a lot of people are looking at what is the best way to get him in. This is a slightly different one. In this draft, we've called it the big at the back Salah draft because there are quite a few expensive defenders, and it's actually starting in a 4-4-2, and at points could be almost a 5-4-1 or a 5-3-2, and I've not really seen this a lot, this big at the back, and it's not necessarily massive because there is no Trent, but you've got Estepinian, Gabriel, Stones, Chilwell. Having those 4 is relatively big at the back. But if you glance at the bench, the 5th defender is Reece James. I actually really like this because I think Estepinian, Gabriel, Stones, really good chance for clean sheets over the opening 3 weeks. And then Chilwell and James have such amazing attacking threat that from Game Week 3 onwards, and even in these opening game weeks, you can really imagine them getting good attacking returns. We don't yet know, because we haven't seen the press conference yet, we could potentially see Reece James on penalties in the absence of Nkunku too. So I like the idea of going for Reece James. I still think I just about favour Chilwell because I think he's slightly further along in his fitness journey. I think he's playing slightly more attacking in this role. because in possession at points, it looks like Reece James is almost slotting back into the back three. Not quite that defensive, but I feel like Chilwell is definitely the more attacking fullback. The midfield four is Salah, Rashford, Saka, and Eze. All you've done in this draft in comparison to the previous one is you've lost one of your £6.5 million midfielders. In this case, it was Diaby, and just invested that money into the defence. So the teams aren't too dissimilar. I just wanted to say that big at the back often doesn't work. And yes, we might expect slightly less clean sheets this season due to the extra minutes that are going to be in games. But all of those defenders have high attacking threat, good chance for clean sheets, and good fixtures as well. I love a 4-4-2 to start the season. And as I said, this is almost a 4-5-1 at points as well. It's rated at exactly the same kind of rating, 94% by the Fantasy Football Hub algorithm. 65.1 points, though, in Game Week 1. So this is predicted to do slightly better in Game Week 1. I would love to know down below, as well as if you have Salah in your drafts, do you prefer the 4-4-2 that I'm showing you here with a little bit more money in the defence? Or do you prefer having 5 midfielders and having another 6.5 in the midfield? Those are 2 Salah drafts that I really like. I just need to decide myself, probably on the deadline stream, do I want to have Salah for Game Week 1? So a lot of people, myself included, are probably bored of looking at the same team every time, but you don't necessarily want to ruin your chances of having a good season just to do something different. So this next draft, I've called the Breaking the Template draft, and the reason I like it is because it is pretty template, but it's differed in kind of 3 or 4 spots, and that is enough to completely change your team in comparison to the template without going out there and doing silly things just for the sake of it. So the few spots that are different in this draft, 2 £4.5 million keepers, and actually starting with Jason Steele with Johnston on the bench. I don't mind that. It's a really nice opening fixture. I do think that Steele is going slightly under the radar, maybe just because there's a slight chance of rotation with Verbruggen, but also because a lot of people have Estepinian and maybe don't want to double up on the defence. But you can see this draft has dropped Estepinian as a result and actually brought in an Aston Villa defender in Matty Cash. Matty Cash is definitely the most attacking Villa defender, but I also don't think he's 100% nailed. So I would maybe just be a little bit careful about that pick. Having spoken to a few Villa fans, they actually seem to think at the moment Konsa may be the most nailed Villa defender, because if they can play him either the right centre-back or more like a right-back role, if they're going to play more of a high attacking left-back on the left-hand side, though, depending which side they decide to have that kind of inverted high-up full-back, Konsa can either play as a centre-back or more like a right-back. You've also got Mings and Pau Torres might be slightly more nailed than Matty Cash, but I like the idea of going for Jason Steele and dropping Estepinian. It's doing something slightly different. The midfield is pretty template. As you can see, maybe the only slight difference is Eze ahead of Mbeumo and Matoma. The thing that I love about the midfield, again, another thing that could break the template, is they're not captaining Erling Haaland. So you can see here, the captaincy is on Bukayo Saka. We know how good Saka is at home. Absolutely excellent. As far as we know, he's still on penalties. And Nottingham Forest have really, really struggled in pre-season. They weren't great towards the back end of last season either. I don't mind going against Haaland for captaincy. We also have seen that stat going around that Haaland has not scored in his last 6 competitive games. So Haaland's not necessarily in the best of form. He's looked okay in pre-season. I don't mind the idea of going against him. I mean, I'm not going to do it. I'm just saying you don't have to necessarily change your team massively. Just a switch of captaincy is already going against the template. And then the final thing that I really, really like about this team is Julian Alvarez in there. This is a player that I could definitely see myself bringing in on the deadline stream. If we get note that Alvarez is starting, I've currently got João Pedro and money in the bank in that forward spot. Who's to say Alvarez doesn't outscore João Pedro over the opening few game weeks, especially if he gets to start in Game Week 1 against Burnley away, the first fixture of the season. I quite like the idea of a punt on Alvarez. KDB doesn't look quite fully fit yet. I reckon that'll actually go on for a few game weeks. Even if he does get a start, I think Alvarez will get significant minutes off the bench. So I really, really like that. And like I said, this was just to say, if you do want to go slightly against the template, you can, while still having a strong team. You can see 95% rated according to Fantasy Football Hub. Decent predicted points too. I absolutely love this draft from the Football Chatter. Let me know what you think of it down below. So there are a few rumours going around at the moment that the best way to have a good season in FPL this year is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. But really, I would appreciate if you could subscribe. Completely free for you to do, but it massively supports me. And I do appreciate all of the support throughout pre-season as well. So if you've enjoyed today's video thus far, please do consider subscribing. Draft number 4 is something that I spoke about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I was absolutely slated in the comments. It was my least viewed video of pre-season. And now all of a sudden, lots of people are talking about it. And that is the idea of a bench boost in Game Week 1. Now, the reason that more and more people are talking about it over the last few days is because Ben Crellin and Planet FPL James, 2 people that predict a lot of the fixture scheduling over the season, and they're over on Twitter, they obviously are on podcasts as well. They are predicting that there won't be as many big double game weeks this season as usual. And in fact, probably only double game week 37 will have like a significant amount of double game weeks. And of course, by the back end of the season in game week 37, teams might be rotating, they might be on the beach, and it's pretty difficult to build a good bench boost as a result, because you probably don't want to save your second wildcard for that late. What that essentially means is it may well be worthwhile not saving your bench boost for the back end of the season and potentially not saving it for a double game week. I would just note that I don't think that necessarily means that you need to play it in game week 1. It just means that maybe if there is a game week where your bench looks pretty good in a single game week, you consider playing it. And I think that's maybe more my approach now. I'm not necessarily as keen on the game week 1 bench boost, but I am significantly more keen on an early bench boost and potentially a bench boost in a single game week, which I wouldn't usually do. Let me know down below what you think of that, or if you still think you'll try and save it for one of maybe the smaller double game weeks towards the back end of the season. This bench boost was sent in by Nutmeg FPL. I really do like it. It's really up to you who you think would actually be on the bench. But just to show you, if you looked at that starting 11, you would say, that is an incredibly strong starting 11, because that's what I did at first. I looked at it and thought, I love that team. Maybe I'll include it. Then I saw the notes that the bench boost was active, glanced at the bench, and it's also got a strong bench. And I couldn't quite work out how this came in under budget. But you've got a really strong defense. You've got a super strong midfield. Rashford, Saka, Eze still in there. Maddison is a really nice pick, someone that I'm desperate to get into my Game Week 1 team, but I just can't quite make work at the moment. Diogo Jota in there as well. If you can't get Salah into your team, I think Jota is probably the next best Liverpool attacker. We know about Haaland and João Pedro. Most of these drafts have these two in there. And then when you look at the bench, Jason Steele, absolutely excellent option for the bench boost. Whether you play Steele or Johnston, it doesn't really matter. Tarkowski as well, looks like he will be fit for Game Week 1. We know he's got a bullet header in him, and Everton have looked really solid pre-season defensively. Udogie in there, who has amazing attacking threat, and we do think will start the season at left back for Spurs. And then Nicholas Jackson. Again, you could play Jackson ahead of Jota and put Jota on the bench if you want. And to be honest, if you really wanted to maximize Game Week 1, you could even put someone like a Martinelli or a Foden in there instead of Diogo Jota, and all of a sudden this looks even better for Game Week 1. So I really don't mind it. I'm not going to encourage you to not bench boost in Game Week 1, and I would definitely encourage you to at least consider this season, just due to the probable scheduling that we've got with less big double game weeks, that you maybe consider playing it in an early single game week this season, getting it out the way, and as soon as you've got the bench boost out the way, you can focus all of your money and in your second wildcard all into your starting 11. And I really, really do like the idea of that. So this bench boost is rated at 95% according to Hub. And of course, the predicted points are a lot higher at 76.1, just because you've got 4 extra players. So draft number 5 is a 3-4-3 draft, and the reason I wanted to show you this is mainly for the formation, but also a couple of nice picks in there as well. I am still keen on the 3-4-3. I don't necessarily think that you should default to a 3-5-2. We've spoken about why we like the 3-5-2. It's not necessarily just because there are 5 really good midfielders that you can have, but also that you can have several price points and lots of flexibility to move to other midfielders from sort of game week 3, 4, 5 onwards, because so many midfielders always emerge. It may be, for example, we get like Mudryk looks really, really good, and you've not got a nice £6.5 million price point there, and it makes it easy to move. Or potentially Raheem Sterling looks really good, and because you've got Maddison or Foden, again, you've got another really good price point. When you only have 4 midfielders, and especially if it's something like Saka, Fernandes, Martinelli, Rashford, there's less chance of you wanting to sell one of those 4, and often you end up having to sell a player that you don't necessarily want to. Add a 5th midfielder in there, and someone that maybe you don't mind taking a risk on. You've almost got that extra spot to move around and make transfers. But I do still like the 3-4-3, because of course you get an extra forward in there. The reason I like this 3-4-3 more potentially than I've seen in others is it can also be a 3-5-2, or it could potentially be a 4-4-2 if you wanted, because the 5th midfielder is Garnacho, and this is a player that I've been considering more and more. He's priced at 5 million in FPL, and he is definitely not a long-term option, and I want to reiterate that as a Manchester United fan, he is not going to be starting week in, week out, unless we get a ton of injuries. That being said, Højlund is currently injured. Yes, we've signed him, but he's not going to be available for Game Week 1, probably Game Week 2 and 3 either. So in the short term, Højlund is not available. Sancho has been poor once again in pre-season and doesn't seem to be favoured by Ten Hag. So at the moment, our likely front 3 is Garnacho on the left, Rashford through the middle, and Antony on the right. Yes, we can play some kind of formation with more of like a double pivot and one of Bruno or Mount playing on the wings, and then all of a sudden Garnacho isn't nailed. But I don't see any reason to do that when Garnacho has looked so good in pre-season. I would be very, very shocked if he doesn't start 2 of the opening 3, potentially even 3 out of the opening 4. There is a chance that he's benched, and I should say that even when he does play, I would be very surprised to see him get 90 minutes. But at 5 million, he will do a job for you. And maybe if you're struggling to get Rashford and Fernandes into your team, but you still want a little piece of that Manchester United attack, I do think that Garnacho is one of the better options at that price point. Just make sure that you are not reliant on him from sort of game week 4 onwards, because as soon as Højlund comes in, I think Rashford will be pushed out to the left. I think Antony will be preferred to Garnacho, and all of a sudden he becomes a little bit of an issue. But I just wanted to say that I'm considering him, and I think especially if you are considering Salah, and you also want maybe Watkins in there and a couple of expensive midfielders, maybe as a fifth midfielder in a Salah draft, Garnacho could be really nice as well. So I just wanted to show the team for that reason. The other pick in here that I just wanted to discuss briefly is Ben White. I don't think Ben White is the one to go for. He's 0.5 more than Saliba and Gabriel, and having spoken to some Arsenal fans, he's certainly not nailed this season. They could play like Timber and Kivois, they could play Tierney, they could play Zinchenko when he's back fit. They've got a few different options that they can play there. It seems to be that Gabriel and Saliba are the two nailed ones, and I think that Ben White, as a result, there's just no point paying that extra 0.5 for him. But I really, really like this team. Let me know down below if you are considering Garnacho in your teams. Apologies for the quality on this. The screenshot isn't the best quality, but I still wanted to include it because I absolutely love it. And as you can see, Fantasy Football Hub rating it at 97% with the highest predicted points of the bunch. They really like it too. It's fairly template again. There are a lot of picks that are in everyone's teams. Pickford, Estepinian, Saka, Martinelli, Fernandes, Rashford, etc. João Pedro, Haaland. However, it's kind of putting all of your eggs in a couple of baskets and taking a risk that what you expect to happen will happen. Double City defense is the first one. I love this, and all of the algorithms will love this too. City are the best defense in the league. They've got the best expected goals conceded per 90 by some distance out of all of the defenses, and they have the best fixtures over the opening 6 to 8 game weeks out of all of the teams too. Best fixtures, best defense. Yes, some of their players aren't nailed, and it might be difficult to get all of the starts for the City defenders. But for something like Stones and Gvardiol, I would expect them to start the majority of the opening games, because recently it has come out that Diaz has a little bit of an injury going into game week 1. Ake has been previously injured. Yes, he might be fit, but maybe he'll be rested a little bit in the opening couple. So I really like the idea of Stones and Gvardiol. You could even go for Ederson if you wanted to. Stones and Ederson may be even safer than that. But you are covering the best defense in the league. And if they keep 4 clean sheets in the opening 6, you, of course, have 8 clean sheets in the opening 6 fixtures, which is absolutely massive. And yes, they maybe don't get that many bonus points, but those clean sheet points definitely do tally up. So I really like the idea of double City defense. And because you've got double City defense, of course, you've probably lost Gabriel out of the team. It does allow triple Arsenal attack. And of course, Gabriel Jesus is no longer an option. But Saka, Martinelli, Ødegaard is an option. And yes, it takes up 3 valuable Arsenal spots. But the way that I would view this, maybe Tian Ball isn't viewing it in this way, but the way I would view this if I went in with this team is one of those spots will probably become someone like a Sterling or a Maddison in game week 3 or game week 4. So what you are doing over the opening 3 weeks when Arsenal have excellent fixtures, you are covering one of the best attacks in the league with their 3 best attacking options. And then after game week 3, you can decide, is Martinelli looking isolated? Is he getting rotated too much with Trossard? Well, then you sell Martinelli. Is Ødegaard playing a little bit too deep? That's fine. Sell Ødegaard. Is Saka no longer on penalties, which some people seem to hypothesize? That's great. Then you sell Saka. So you're not necessarily committing to owning these 3 Arsenal mids for the entire season. You're just committing to owning them probably for the opening 2 or 3 fixtures when they are very, very good. So I actually love this draft. It's a bit similar to the breaking the template one in that a lot of the picks are the same, but you are backing the best defense in the league. You're backing one of the best attacks in the league, and you're also leaving yourself fairly flexible from game week 3 onwards. So the final draft today is a triple Liverpool draft, and Liverpool are definitely a team where their players are underrepresented in FPL, and maybe rightly so, because Trent and Salah are the best 2 options, but they are difficult to squeeze in. And outside of that, it is difficult to predict the minutes for the Liverpool attackers. But if we're expecting Liverpool to be up there with Arsenal challenging for the Premier League, or at least challenging for the top 4 comfortably throughout the season, then we're probably expecting their assets to do fairly well. And if you can get Trent and Salah into a team without it being completely terrible, and you feel like you can now the best Liverpool attacker outside of those 2, then it could be a decent draft. There are a few things wrong with this draft, which we'll discuss in a second. Just on Trent, I still don't fancy Trent as a pick, just because I don't think Liverpool will be good enough defensively to justify the £8 million price tag. And also in pre-season thus far, Trent is playing more like a number 6 than a number 8. Of course, going into the Premier League, he might go back to that number 8 role, or he might play more just like a natural right back, maybe maintaining width and allowing Salah to come infield a little bit more. But from what we've seen, he is playing a little bit more defensive in pre-season than what we saw towards the back end of last season when Trent was an excellent FPL asset once again. So for me, Trent isn't really an option, but I can understand why you want him. He's traditionally been absolutely brilliant. And if he does play a more advanced role and potentially is on all the set pieces still, then he could be excellent. Salah is a player that we've spoken about enough in this video, but I desperately want him, and I think it could potentially be worth sacrificing 1 or 2 spots to get Salah in, specifically because he is such a good Game Week 2 captaincy option. And then on Darwin, Darwin's one I've been going back and forth on. If you watch my channel for a while, you will know how much I love Darwin, both as a player and also just a stats monster. I love stats, I love analytics, and I feel like Darwin's stats cannot be ignored. He consistently puts up over 1 expected goals per 90, or 1 expected goal involvement per 90, which is exceptionally good, and pretty much only Haaland beats that in the Premier League. So I love his data. I thought he was going to be more nailed. Got the number 9 shirt, but in pre-season thus far, he's just not been starting any of the games. Didn't start their final 2 pre-season games, didn't start the game against Bayern Munich, which pretty much looked like their best starting 11. And in the final pre-season game, Liverpool played 4 attackers, Jota, Gakpo, Diaz, and Salah, all 4 of them in a team, and Darwin still didn't get on the pitch. So, yes, he could start some of the opening games. It might mean that he even starts against Bournemouth. But for me, if you're going to go for a Liverpool asset outside of Salah and Trent, it's probably one of Jota or Gakpo. I would say Gakpo's best for expected minutes if you're just focused on getting the most nailed Liverpool attacker. But I would say Jota, maybe whilst his expected minutes are slightly lower, has much better data than both Gakpo and Diaz. And on Diaz, I think he's their best left winger. I think Diaz should start every game. But again, I do just worry that he might rotate a little bit with both Darwin and Jota potentially. So I really do like this draft, but I would just be a little bit careful on all 3 of the options as a result, and specifically Trent and Darwin. The other thing I would note is I'm not sure about starting a £4.5 million midfielder on a regular basis. They've got Chukwuemeka in this draft. I do think he's one of the better £4.5 million midfielders, but I wouldn't necessarily want to over-rely on him. As a result, I would see, can you potentially squeeze to Garnacho, who we discussed in one of the recent drafts? I don't mind that. Or potentially just, in my opinion, I would drop Trent. I know the whole point of this is to show triple Liverpool, but I would drop Trent. And in dropping Trent to a 5 million, you can upgrade Chukwuemeka to your 6.5 of choice. If you want to be different with it, go for a Diaby or a Mudryk, you can feel free to do that. It would just give you a little bit more flexibility. The other pick that I love in this team is Gibbs White. Not many people looking at that sort of £6 million price point, but I like Gibbs White as an option. If the fixtures were better for Forest, I would seriously consider him. Ended the season really strong, got lots of attacking returns last season. I just think that the fixtures aren't there. Again, Forest haven't been too good in pre-season as well. I think there are probably slightly better options for me, at least to start the season. But I do like the idea of a bit of a differential because a lot of teams are looking fairly similar, and Gibbs White in there is a nice change. So do let me know what you think of this slightly different triple Liverpool draft down below in the comments. And also let me know, out of the 7 drafts that you've seen today, please do let me know which is your favourite. I would just note, I probably should have said this at the start of the video, I've not really considered any Kane drafts in today's video, or if Kane leaves drafts, just because it's so up in the air at the moment. I didn't want this video to immediately be redundant if in the morning when it goes live, Kane either decides to stay or leave. If you want my final opinion on Kane, whether it's worth taking the risk, should you have Richarlison, I will discuss that in the deadline stream, which again will be at 4 PM UK time, 2.5 hours before the deadline for Game Week 1. And we can discuss Kane in a bit more detail. But I think there are enough good options to potentially probably not worth risking, for me at the moment anyway, starting with Richarlison unless we know for certain that Kane leaves, or even starting with Kane in the hope that he stays. I would probably just avoid altogether. And if you want a second premium, I probably would go for Mohamed Salah. So guys, there you have it. That is my final video of pre-season. Again, a massive thank you for all of the support during these daily uploads. This is the first time for me across an entire month doing daily uploads. We've actually had 29 videos in 33 days. So thank you so much for the support. It has been one hell of a ride. Going into the season, we will still uploading 3 videos a week and 1 stream as well. So if you've got to this point in the video and you've not yet subscribed and you're looking forward to the maybe more regular content across the season, please do consider subscribing. Make sure to drop a like on the video too. And as I said, tune into the deadline stream at 4 PM UK time, 2.5 hours before the deadline, because it will be an absolute classic. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.